Alrighty, welcome to another episode of Straight Out of Politics. I am one of your hosts. I'm Compton J. I'm joined by my co-host down below. How are you doing, Liv?
I'm fabulous. I'm so excited to be here today with Michelle joining us. I'm so
Yeah,
excited.
and a friend of the show. You saw her on. I think the last time you saw her was on this channel was on the General Strike Summit, where she had a great presentation and great contribution to the General Strike Summit. How are you today, Michelle?
I'm doing okay. Lots going on. Of course, Omicron scares the crap out of me. You know,
Hmm.
and but I think what continues to scare me is the realities that so many people don't understand what it's like to be disabled and living through the pandemic, and the risk factors that are inherent in that. But overall, I'm working, I'm living, I'm continuing on, and uh, I have the comforts that I have, so I can't really complain. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, we will touch up. Oh, let me touch upon the topics. We will talk about the CDC director's comments and how that her comments reflect on the disabled community and disability rights activists are heated, as we all should be, heated about what has been. I guess she said the quiet part out loud, and now has come under fire. So that will be our main topic, and then we'll also touch upon voting rights in the filibuster. We'll touch upon AOC, I'm sorry, the squad being having the ability to control most, if not all, legislation that touches the House floor. And then I'm missing one here. Hang on one second here. Oh, this one, the fun one, cannabis and COVID-19. There was an
Yay.
article that an article that kind of I'm sorry, a study that kind of came out recently that ties the two in a positive way. So I want to discuss that article also. So those are the topics. But before we jump into topics, as always, make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you check to make sure you are still subscribed. If you think you are, because YouTube is not doing us any favors when it comes to that. In fact, people have told us that they've been unsubscribed. So just make sure you check that. Make sure you support us in the way that you can. If it's not financially, of course, not everybody can do that. Tweet us out. Watch us. Like this video. Everything that you can. So. We want to build this community, and we want to make sure everybody who wants to be included in this community has that ability. So now that that's out the way, now let's get right into the topic. And I do, Michelle, would like prefer, if you don't mind, prefer to I would like to lean on you to describe. Uh, I mean, we could play the video, of course, and kind of set the ground, but in when you sent me the hashtag, and we'll get to that in just a second. When you sent me the hashtag and I clicked on it, um, just the stories, that I saw when I clicked on that hashtag. So if you can just kind of talk about, the hashtag that you sent me, and how this whole story came about, the comments. If you can kind of just lay the foundation for the conversation.
Yeah, so before we even show the video and stuff, I think it's important to realize that people with disabilities are often referred to as canaries in the coal mine. So what that means is we're like harbingers. We kind of look ahead because we have to look ahead to protect ourselves. So
Mm,
throughout the pandemic, we've been calling for things like transportation programs to testing sites and to vaccination sites. And the realities that we rely on in-home workers that are underpaid and essential workers. So when early in the pandemic, I lost my worker, and that experience taught me a whole lot about what
mm,
how much society really cares. When everybody else was receiving an extra $600 a month, people with disabilities on public service programs were told, no, you're getting everything that you need right now, much like seniors were as well. So I think that the hashtag of My Disabled Life Matters came about because the ableism that is inherent in our systems and structures, it's reaching a point that is putting especially seniors and people with disabilities at great harm, risk of great harm. Even for me personally, I had to say to my employment recently, and I'm like the director of a nonprofit, I had to say to them, if you want to do this, you need to lay me off, because it's not safe for me to be, even fully vaccinated and everything else. It is not safe for me to be in public spaces that are not controllable, and you all know from social justice organizing that there's a lot in our world that's not controllable, because everybody is working with less than. Everybody is currently, and I'm going to say this and I may take flack for it, is disabled by the structures, that the supports that are not offered. They're disabled by society, and made everything is so much more difficult because we're reaching this point where you have to be a commodity. You're not a human being. And it's like, okay, I'm sorry, my disabled life matters, and I don't need your eugenics, because that's exactly what it is. So, and I'm going to ramble a little bit, but I'll get back to us showing the video, because I like to ramble.
Yes, no problem, no problem. That's what we do on this show, actually, a lot.
Exactly. But it's eugenics is actually the eugenics that was done in Germany was based on the US eugenics programs that were already in existence. Forced sterilization, the killing of disabled people, or the even not even the killing, it's that violent act of looking away. It's that lack of value, the lack of, you have no value to me. And so fast forward the number of years that we have, and unlike Germany that did a lot of kind of healing, and there's still a lot more to do for that, because it was atrocious what happened during the Holocaust and all this other stuff. But the United States never fully checked their ableist tendencies and their eugenics that is baked in. Black and brown bodies experience this all the time. Unhoused experience this now. The people that we help in the communities that are the most in need are the groups that need to be acknowledged and valued. But with disability, we're put into a closet, and we're said, because the public health system is ableist in the sense that disability is a sign of failure. It's a measure of failure in the public health system. So once you get into that, you have a condition, you have a quote unquote fucking comorbidity, excuse my language, but I have a whole page of comorbidities. I'm not 3, I'm not 1, I'm not 2, I'm not 3. I'm like 20 conditions that I manage on a regular basis. And none of this is because I make unhealthy choices. I mean, it's because of the structure that we live in and the hardships that I've experienced throughout my life. So with that, what's sad is we've been screaming this from the top of our voices that we need better supports. But currently the CDC reducing the quarantine period, the isolation periods, everybody must get back to work. Delta's involvement with that is just lovely, and all a sign of how we are, who we are, and why we're struggling the way we're struggling. So with that, this is like that whole inside voice was set outside, and now they're trying to walk it back, and they're muddying it by adding the Republican viewpoint in there, which that stuff was cut out and cut probably inappropriately. But the disabled sentiment is inherent in what she says or what she doesn't say. And then when she's trying to walk it back, it's also, and that was that second link that I shared with you, when she's trying to walk it back in some version of a congressional hearing, that she was given the opportunity by a Democratic person to actually say, oh, I didn't mean this and everybody's taking me wrong. She still fails to, and I'm probably going to have to point out those nuances, because most people don't understand the ableism that we live in. So
it's almost like she's speaking and talking from a point of view as if she hasn't spoken or talking to anybody in the disabled community. That's what it seems like to me. Like you don't have any reference point on what you're saying. That's why you sound so ridiculous. And even the walk back, even the cleanup is ridiculous, which tells me you continue to not talk to the right people on this topic. But I do want to, I don't ever want to think that our audience, or this is what I always think, that somebody in my audience doesn't know these topics. So when we say terms, I want to make sure we define them. Eugenics. Can you talk about eugenics, or define that for our audience here?
So
I have the definition, by the way, ready to put on the screen, but I just kind of wanted you to speak about that.
eugenics is, I think what's helped me view eugenics as a reality is looking at it from the capitalistic structure. What it is the constant devaluation and degradation of a group of people, even to the point of making them non-existent. People with disabilities are supposed to accept their little handouts and then go away. Or we're supposed to have the different supports that we have. But it's a desire to eradicate and or kill populations that are not necessarily deemed as worthy. And I think that summarizes the actual meaning, but it's a set of beliefs, a set of practices, a set of policies, and it gets to be a whole lot. And it's hard to always see because a lot of times it's silent.
And that's the thing is, for people who are not disabled and live in that ableist world, they don't recognize this all the time. They don't recognize this most of the times, I would say, me included. So it's a relearning of this is just another thing we have to relearn because we've been conditioned through capitalist thinking, whether capitalist thinking is through our education or just through our norms and just the way we look at things. And I was just saying this to Nick in our show on Monday about something completely different, of how we call people low skill workers and we pay them low, and it's because it stems from not value, or it's all about devaluing physical work that doesn't produce what you want it to produce, or it's giving value or devaluing or giving more value to physical outcomes. So, for example, this is why our elderly in this community, in our country, isn't valued like other countries, because when you get older, how capitalists see it, or capitalist thinking see it, is you get older, you can't lift as much, you can't move as fast, you can't, pick as much cotton, you can't do these things. So
Yeah.
your value just through the understanding of what's valuable in society, which is money or the physical production of something. Like, it's just without even explicitly saying it. You get what I'm saying? Like, and I think that's what when you were alluding to nuances that you have to point out.
Mhm.
That's kind of what I'm getting to. But let me read this definition and then we'll get right back to what you were saying. So, eugenics, the selection of desired heritable, I think I said that right, characteristics in order to improve future generations, typically in reference to humans. The term eugenics was coined in 1883 by British explorer and natural science Francis Galton, who influenced by Charles Darwin's theory of natural selection. So this is more of where it came from, who started it, but basically it's the selection of desired. I guess maybe this means inheritable characteristics. Is that what that word means? I'm not sure what that word means. So,
So somewhat
your
it
thoughts?
means inheritable. It's, if you think of the Holocaust, it was about certain colors of eyes and certain hair
Mm-hmm.
colors. And also, though,
Mm-hmm.
there was a huge population of disabled people that were killed in the Holocaust because they were
Mm-hmm.
disabled. Or and I don't know the more correct term, but queer people were also killed, as well as what I'll say is gypsies, and I know that that's a slur, so I don't want to necessarily say it
Mhm,
completely. Say it with ask for grace of that terminology.
mhm,
But anybody that's categorized as other is a version of eugenics. I mean, it's how much harder do you have to struggle to get by? What
mhm,
systems don't you have access to? Do you go to the gynecologist or obstetrician and worry about them forcibly, coercively sterilizing you?
mhm.
Which is something that Black and brown bodies and disabled bodies have shared that history. We had forced sterilization that happened just a couple of years ago in the immigrant community, the
Mhm.
undocumented, those without
Yes.
documentation, in the camps. So, all of this is,
Is it about see, I like to look at the oranges. I'm trying to think, is it about the perpetual uh genes, pure white genes, that is it's the epitome of whatever that is, physical, tall, like you said, eye color, hair color, like anything outside of that deviates from what is perfect, or what is desirable. Is that sort of like what we're talking about here?
yeah, I would say completely. And there's as a disabled person, as I've walked through my history of disability, you know, I felt like a burden more than not, when in reality, if I'm given the right set of circumstances, I can contribute more than I ever thought possible. But I didn't realize that I needed those quote unquote supports that society says makes me a burden on society and
Hmm.
less desirable. So it is just that that structural creation of the ideal person. They are healthy, they're fit. And
Right.
over time, those realities, those categories have shifted, because it used to be if you were slightly heavy, you were seen as, in rich and
Yes.
powerful and all this other stuff. But that's shifted over time. And these are all, I will say, ableist as well as eugenicist type programs that impact everybody. It's not just disabled people that get impacted, it's Black and brown people that get impacted.
Mhm.
It's the single mother that's working that gets impacted. And how many programs actually support what they do versus stigmatize and segregate the individual that's needing the community help, the mutual aid or whatever, or go into the C word of charity, the charity process. So yeah.
Absolutely. Liv, I'm sorry. Did you want to jump in, or are you just kind of listening and learning intently here, like as am I?
Sorry. Yes, please keep going. I'm very much enjoying listening.
Right. So I think we can get to one of the videos, maybe the first one you sent. We can get to now. So now this video, oh, let me put it on the screen before I begin to talk about it. That way
Okay.
people can see. But go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Just kind of the CDC director did first this one video, which was like a press statement and an interview, I think, on Good Morning America. And then I think I've already said this, there was a lot of flack about that. The disabled community activated in a beautiful way, to just kind of flag it. And then the second video would be the one where she walks back a little bit, or tries to walk back what she actually said. And through that process of walking back, she actually exposes her ableism and her lack of knowledge that much more.
Hmm.
Um,
So let's play this first one, and then we can talk about it on the other side. But this is the tweet. I hope I say this person's name right, but Matthew Cortland, I think that's right, JD.
mhm.
So this is a lawyer. Today, CDC director said, and the person quotes what's in the video that we're going to play. But the quote is, the overwhelming number of deaths, over 75%, occurred in people who had at least 4 comorbidities. So really, these people who were unwell to begin with, and yes, really encouraging news in the context of Omicron. This is eugenesis. I think eugenesis. So let's play the video and then we can talk about it on the other side. Here we go.
I want to ask you about those encouraging headlines that we're talking about this morning, this new study showing just how well vaccines are working to prevent severe illness. Given that, is it time to start rethinking how we're living with this virus, that it's potentially here to stay?
The overwhelming number of deaths, over 75%, occurred in people who had at least 4 comorbidities. So really, these are people who were unwell to begin with. And yes, really encouraging news in the context of Omicron. This means not only just to get your primary series, but to get your booster series. And yes, we're really encouraged by these results.
Dr. Walensky, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
So
you said they were encouraged twice.
Headlines that we're talking about.
Oh, sorry.
Study showing just how well vaccines are working to prevent.
I'm sorry. Thought the tweet stop on its own. So that is a tweet. Now I'm gonna probably go to this again, but I'm gonna take it out of the stream for now. I mean, so tell me, I don't know if you saw it live, but whenever you watched it, were you able to watch it before you saw the reaction, or did you see the reaction first and then you went to watch the video?
I saw the reaction first.
Mhm.
And then I of course looked for the video, because I think that it's human nature kind of to for all of us to be in our feels, and it's important to have the extra context sometimes. But those feels are not inaccurate or inappropriate or anything else. It's like we all have our trauma, and this induced a trauma response in the disabled community, and I think that that's important for everybody to understand. But I'm amazed at the clarity that people spoke with, the vulnerability that they spoke with. That reaction is very powerful, and hopefully through all of this, that's what we can learn from. So,
But what was your reaction? And can you speak to your reaction? And then can
yeah.
you speak to some of the reactions you've read that you're talking about? Like what is the message you get, the powerful message you get, the hurt that you hear in that? Because it's hard for people, or it may be hard for people who this statement is about, to understand what she is saying. She's
And
basically saying these people are the ones that's dying and getting sick, so they're already unwell, so there you go. So everybody else is in good shape, as if their lives doesn't matter. So try to substitute it with you, whatever demographic you're in. So if you're part of the trans community, imagine if she said trans people instead of what she said. So substitute yourself. If you're black, say, if she said poor and black people, substitute that for context.
Right.
So what was your reaction? And then can you speak to others that you've heard or seen?
Yeah. My general reaction, I wasn't surprised, except for the fact that they actually said it out loud.
Mm,
My experience through this pandemic, especially through the point where they tried to pivot and open up all businesses, no matter what the consequence was, which in California, we're currently experiencing this with the most recent spike, So the corporate greed and the business greed has been prioritized over the humans in that are present. The other variable is while workers were supported early in the pandemic, like I said earlier, disabled people and seniors were not. I'm not surprised. It's sad that I'm not surprised. And that's the part of why I reached out and said, hey, CJ, have you seen this? Or is it something you guys want to cover? Because we're in the shadows and it's hard to listen to our stories. But I really, really feel like people need to hear those stories in this moment in time. And that reality of the pandemic, where we've all experienced something very, very similar, but and I'll say our positions of privilege have led to that impact being different. I see the debates on vaccine mandates, no vaccine mandates. I see the debates on opening up versus closing versus social distancing or no social distancing. And I'll say physical distancing is still important. And we want to rely on this technology of a for-profit vaccination that may or may not work in all people, but yet the government's been gaslighting disabled people from early on. We knew that the vaccination would not be as effective in some of us as others. You can see the death rates from COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Black and brown people are getting disproportionately killed because of the fact that they have undiagnosed and possibly untreated comorbidities. I'm seeing children with disabilities that are dying because they're forced into schools because they need the supports and education, and they're dying, but those stories are not covered because it's too uncomfortable and it's our fault. Society views it as my fault because I'm heavy, because I have these 3 or 4 or whole page of comorbidities, but I'm sorry, y'all need to stop blaming people for living their life in the best way possible. And you need to just start creating
Mm-hmm.
the supports that humans need and stop this freaking al fresco dining, outdoor dining programs, which are great if you ensure access. They're
Right.
vaccine stations. I was turned away because they didn't have a longer needle. Because technically, if you are 220 pounds or higher as a woman, you are supposed to have a larger needle used to ensure that that vaccination has the most effect possible. But that's not even in mainstream media. It's in my fat media that I can go to and look at. But because people are so fat phobic and so consumed with being perfect, which is again a eugenicist standard, I will say that. And I never used eugenics as a word in my vocabulary until this pandemic. I lived
Mm.
scared. My mother lived scared. Prior to her passing away, she was petrified of not only COVID, but the vaccinations. These people that can't seem to realize that you need to keep 6 feet between me and you to help ensure not only
Mm-hmm.
your safety, but my safety too, and many other people that are worse off than me. I had to purchase this is horrible, $60,000 vehicle because it's a wheelchair accessible van that prior to the pandemic, I relied on public transportation, but I could not be safe in public transportation.
Mm.
All of these stories, though, don't matter to most people. And my hope in all of this is that we can highlight the fact that you and I are both human. We both bleed. We both have different experiences, but together through that interdependence, we are stronger, and we can kind of stop some of this history stuff, some of this framing that is so faulty. And so, and I think locally some people have made that shift, but it trickles. It's
Mm.
like the worst kind of trickle down effect ever, and all of them are bad to start with. Yeah.
So it's like we have a level of people, which mainstream media, oh, we can't get tests. Oh, we can't, um, you- it seems like they should be talking about this to me. Yeah, people can't get tests, but there's another level of people, another group of people that's not even being heard whatsoever, that's in a worse condition than the people who can't get tests. So it's like, it's just terrible. It just, you wake up every day and it's like, it's so many fights to front this failing state. There's so many fights to fight. It's just, and this is another one that when you hear it, you just cannot just go, oh, just chalk that up. Like, I can't hear this. And then go, just add that to the list. You know what I mean? Like, this is something that we have to add to this fight because just like people that are poor, it's the invisible Americans, they're completely invisible. People in poverty, people that are in the disabled community, completely invisible. Nobody's talking about this stuff. Michelle, go ahead.
Oh, but it's so much more complex than that, because
Mhm.
I had my city. Okay, so I'm talking San Jose, California, that is like the hub of technology, everything. They're pitting disabled people against people of color or communities of color by
Mm,
things where they set up a vaccination clinic on a highly populated, more densely area in the east side of San Jose. And it's important, yes, that they have that vaccine clinic, but it had zero disability access for people that use walkers, canes, wheelchairs. And I had a city official actually tell me that, oh, the communities of color needed this clinic more than, and they could just send disabled people elsewhere. And that was okay.
mm.
So
What do you?
all of this
Oh, I'm
is
sorry.
a
It
mess.
froze a
It's
little.
just a
It
mess.
froze a little bit.
Yeah.
Sorry, it froze a little bit, and then you caught up. Okay.
Yeah.
It's So okay, so let's sort of get back to the timeline. So she says this statement, then there's an immediate backlash, even the trending hashtag, which is still trending, by the way. Like if you go look it up, it's still trending. Um and then she goes to make another appearance somewhere. Let me see. I have that video up also. This one is see my okay. So she goes to make another appearance, and we'll get back to this comment too, because I kind of want to talk about this comment right here. So let's bring up this other video where she makes her, where's it? Okay, this one, second appearance. Um, and let me just read the tweet here. The disability community and the GOP have very different talking points, and the disability communities aren't out of context. In fact, our concerns are due to the context that the CDC has not dealt with our concerns adequately. So this is the video here. Let me make it bigger first.
That policy and that work are both focused.
Hang on a second. I like to make it bigger for those. Now, this one does not have subtitles, unfortunately. I don't think it does.
That policy and that work are both focused on ensuring that all Americans receive the best possible treatment and protection. This is especially important for older adults and people with disabilities who may need additional supports and protections. So context is important in an interview like this. So please explain what point you were making. That's number one, the point you were making. And secondly, outline CDC's commitment to protecting older adults and people with disabilities as we continue to address the pandemic.
Senator Casey, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to explain this. And, to step back, that interview on Friday, I recently spoke to a study on the high level of protection against vaccines. It was a pre-taped interview and much of it was cut, and that phrase was taken out of context, as you note. The study was a cohort of 1.2 million people who were vaccinated, and 36 people passed. Demonstrating the remarkable effectiveness of our vaccines. But no less tragic is the 36 people who passed because of COVID-19, and that many of them had comorbidities that I've spent my career taking care of, comorbidities that just prior to coming to the CDC, we saw time and time again disproportionately impacting people with COVID-19 and the hospitals that I cared for patients. So what are we doing at CDC given the critical importance? Well, we have toolkits for COVID-19 for patients with disabilities. We have accessible materials that are available in Braille, in American Sign Language, so that people with disabilities, in easier to read and understand language, so that people with disabilities can access our materials. We have improved data collection systems on our COVID data tracker. You can track vaccination status by disability. And we've worked with states to make sure that those are reporting. And then we're funding partners and our public health partners to do more for patients with disability. And if anything, this issue on Friday has redoubled our commitment to continuing to make sure that we have access for people with disabilities. Thank you for allowing me to clarify.
That sounds terrible. That sounds actually absolutely terrible. And the stuff she listed was as if she wanted credit for that, and that list was terrible. Like, I don't like that was supposed to be a cleanup video, Michelle, because that was terrible. I was waiting for let me see if there's gonna be something else, but there wasn't. Oh, it says you are muted. It said you muted yourself, Michelle.
Yep, I'm muted. I'm like, right? Seriously? And that's like the one bright ray in all of this. And how sad is it that I'm saying that's a freaking bright ray?
Right.
To so clearly expose the inherent ableism. So, and this brings in other concepts. We have a very paternalistic approach to disability in this country. We don't have a unifying equity approach. We have a disability rights approach. And as disability rights, it just says us disabled people need to thank you for the access to the freaking toilet when we're out at the store. It says that you just need to pass an inspection to ensure that you've checked all those ADA boxes. When in reality, as soon as you pass that inspection, you go put things under the counter in the bathroom to have extra storage space. When I'm sorry, as a disabled person, wheelchair user, I need that space to wash my hands. I need that space to ensure I can go out with my friends. I need that space so that I can work. Currently in my county, if I go to a county board of supervisors meeting, I have to plan to use a restroom at the Togos across the street, because the only way I can access the county bathroom is if a guard escorts me to the staff area and waits while I go to the restroom. And I'm sorry, and this is 31 years after Americans with Disabilities Act was passed, where we have better programs in quote unquote what most Americans would call third world countries, and they're not. That's part of our misinformation, disinformation, media crap too. But it's like, so you're doing what the ADA said you needed to do 31 years ago, and we've had to fight for those items. That's the thing. These resources did not show up at the beginning of the pandemic. They did not create disability resources pages. Most of the programs that were implemented were only for seniors that were of a certain income level, because if you were on food stamps in the seniors, you weren't eligible for that meal delivery service unless you went with the one that you already know about and it wasn't functional to begin with. So we've been left behind for years, and we've been blamed. That's the part that really gets to me, is they want to blame the disabled person for the needs. And I think you guys experienced this too with the General Strike Summit, when I was like, part of what I look for in things that I tap into is the accessibility elements that most people need access to. I mean, we're lucky in the sense that YouTube does a very craptastic job of doing the interpretation standards, and will do auto generation of those captions. But it's expensive. It's like my needs are capitalized in a way that creates a barrier, but yet
it is absolutely terrible. But that experience, Michelle, brought to light to a person who's not disabled to understand that's like a tariff on having access to information. That's a tariff or a tax on that. I thought a couple $100. It was crazy. Like, I forget the amount you told me, but you were telling me like several thousand, and I could not believe it when I actually confirmed that. It was just terrible. But oh, so this point I wanted to. Oh, I'm sorry. This I wanted to play this video again because I wanted to stop it at points, Michelle and Liv. I want to bring you into the conversation. Just different points. I want to stop and start it at. So let's play her part again.
The pandemic.
Senator Casey, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to explain this. And, to step back, that interview on Friday, I recently spoke to a study on the high level of protection against vaccines. It was a pre-taped interview and much of it was cut, and that phrase was taken out of context, as you note.
So that statement right there implies that the words that she said didn't mean the words that she said. Nothing was taken out of context because something that is recorded, yes, it was recorded and played back, but the conversation around this topic, that wasn't cut out. Like you said what you said, they didn't take sections out that made it more clear of what you're trying to say today, which isn't much. It's like you're not even saying much today in response after knowing what you said was received so terribly. So yeah, so let's hear what else she says here.
The study was a cohort of 1.2 million people who were vaccinated, and 36 people passed, demonstrating the remarkable effectiveness of our vaccines.
Is it demonstrating that?
Yeah.
In the sense that 32, or I'm sorry, 32 people, I believe she said, who passed, as if that's just a casualty of this whole game.
Yeah, and I
Like
want to
what
also,
go ahead.
yeah, sorry. I want to also point out that that statistic doesn't include long COVID. It does not
Mm.
include those people of that 1.2 million that will be sick for the rest of their life with a post-viral infection that many people in the disability community have lived with from other viruses for years that create chronic fatigue and other things that prevent us from working, which of course capitalists want us to work and not be a drain on the system. But so that statistic is so misleading. And I'm going to get a little heated here because it's like, I am tired of the non-disabled people in the room hurrying up to get back to quote unquote normal when normal was killing so many people to start with, regardless of their comorbidities, regardless of their life circumstances, and this media push, all it does is further marginalizes me. It adds more elements of fear to me and to other disabled people that have been isolated for 2 years now, 2+ years now. They're in isolation and they realize they have to be in isolation until it's no longer a threat. And what makes it right that even so, and disabled people are 25% at a bare minimum of the US population. And the other amazing, it's like we are valuable. We are important. And also, I'll tell you this, if you guys didn't have us, you wouldn't know half the stuff that you already know because we've learned it the hard way. And we share that experience because we understand interdependence and the need of people to have other people. And it's amazing when you break down that capitalistic cult of individualism and you start to realize that everybody needs somebody else. And I'm not just talking about a sex partner and a family and all this other stuff. I'm talking about people that when you're writing a resume, you can reach out to and they can catch that one tidbit that says, oh, this will help you get a job. And it does. We need people. We need interconnectivity. We need these things. And the able-bodied, non-disabled, which because there's a whole lot of brouhaha in language with disability communities, non-disabled people need to wake up. Everybody experiences disability in their lifetime in some form or another, whether it's a broken arm or a broken leg that requires you, that impacts your life, and there are, things that have happened because of the pandemic that are hugely promising, but I also know that it still is a huge uphill battle for us to get to the point where were understood even, and not continue to be marginalized by somebody saying, oh, this event is for leaders, but it's not captioned and it doesn't have ASL interpreters because,
Hmm.
hey, what does that mean? Disabled people are not leaders. I'm sorry, I'm a leader. I deserve to be there if I want to be there. I don't deserve to have to ask you permission to request an accommodation 2 to 3 days prior to that meeting to ensure that I have access into that space. We need change. We need people to realize that barring us only hurts y'all even more. And it's time for everybody to kind of realize that this drive to fucking kill ourselves more because of capitalism, because to survive, the better way to get the services would be for everybody to freaking sit at home and refuse to go in and work,
Hmm.
and we're not far away from that. And that was why the General Strike Summit was beautiful, but more people need to realize. But the other thing, if you think the masks are oppressing you, you have not experienced oppression. If you think having to stay home out of work is oppression, if you think, and
Right.
I'm going to go into the vaccine mandates on this, if you think getting a freaking needle jab is oppression, and for some people, I will agree it could be, but
Hmm.
if you think that you not doing your part to protect the community just because you think it's too much of a hardship to do, then we need to start talking about who are you harming by that decision, and that break away from the cult of individualism and realize that we're stronger together and we're stronger in community, and we're stronger when we learn those things that we never really realized that we learned. And it's okay to not know, but want to know. And that's where I'm coming from.
How do we where is the outlet to know about what's happening in the disabled community, uh, barring an event like this? Meaning, we only hear about this stuff when somebody in the CDC says something bad. Like, where do you get your news? Like I think you mentioned earlier, Fat News. You have a Fat News outlet. Like, where are these outlets for people who aren't disabled to get this information, maybe on a regular basis, or at least able to reach a place where they can reach out and get the information on a regular basis?
Well, Twitter's amazing in many, many ways. And I'll say Twitter, the largest draw for me into Twitter was the disability Twitter that's so, so active, with amazing people like Imani, Alice Wong, uh, Mia that we shared. Matt is another
Hmm.
one. Part of what happened through COVID, so Crip Camp, the movie was released, and it's an Obama film, and I'm not going to go into that. It was a beautifully done film. Crip Camp was released, I think, just prior to the pandemic. And then they had a weekly virtual Crip Camp throughout the pandemic where they brought these speakers in, and I got connected to a whole bunch of people that I've never really kind of even known about, because it is hard to find these resources. But it's hard to find these resources because we're afraid, and you kind of have to, I guess there's a certain, but I mean, they are out there. There's a certain amount of gatekeeping that happens on some of this deeper stuff. And I think that's the other part about why my disabled life matters and that hashtag is because these people are bearing their souls. They're telling some of the things that we're judged the most for. I don't tell many people I have a whole page of comorbidities, and I don't use comorbidities. The way I view things, and I said this recently in a tweet too, is my disability is an identifier and an identity that I'm proud of. I'm disabled. It's who I am. It's what I am. And then you take it another step and you go to chronic health conditions or chronic illness. With all my list of comorbidities, I'm not unwell. It's doctors that think I'm unwell. But those comorbidities are my medical history. Those are my HIPAA protected type stuff. Nobody needs to know that except for my provider. And I'm sorry, the judgments just need to go away.
That was great. So I saw this link you sent in the chat. This is like the working definition of ableism. Um, I'll let you read it. My eyes are kind of getting blurry from staring at the screen for too long. So, can one of you read this definition? Are you able to see it?
Yeah, I can. I've got it still on my other page, but I want to say that you saying that your eyes are tired is an access need and it's a human need. But
Hmm.
that's the very same as a disabled person who has low vision that says, I need you to read this for me. It's not a special service. It's not a special skill. It's not anything else. It's a collective access practice that we can incorporate into our
That is
daily
great.
life.
That's a great point. So now before you said that, I'm attributing that to me. I'm tired, my eyes. You see, I'm attributing it to myself. I mean, everybody will do that. Well, this is well, that's eye opening there. So yes,
Yeah,
so
you
yes,
couldn't have
that's funny.
presented it
Yeah,
better. Yeah.
yeah. I didn't mean to do that pun, but that was funny too. So so yeah, if you one of you could please read this definition here.
Liv, you want to or you want me to? Okay. So Talila Lewis is a I use this definition in my presentations, my anti-ableism presentations that I do on a more frequent basis than I used to. But and what TL writes uh, is a system that places ableism is a system that places value on people's bodies and minds based on societally constructed ideas of normality, intelligence, excellence, desirability, and productivity. These constructed ideas are deeply rooted in anti-Blackness, eugenics, misogyny, colonialism, imperialism, and capitalism. This form of systemic oppression leads to people in society determining who is valuable and worthy based on a person's language, appearance, religion, and or their ability to satisfactorily reproduce, excel, and behave. You do not have to be disabled to experience ableism.
Yeah. Like the more and more I'm delving into politics and doing these types of shows, I'm seeing more and more connection um to white male supremacy and in just different forms. So white male supremacy, the spinoff of that is, racism against black people. The spinoff also
Mhm.
off of that is sexism against women. Also the spinoff of that is imperialism. Also the spinoff of that is eugenic. You get what I'm saying? Like there's so many things that developed from that, so many ideas, and I think that's what this definition to me is speaking to, that these constructed ideas are deeply rooted in anti-blackness, eugenics. This is what I'm speaking to.
Mhm.
It all stems back to white male supremacy. The white male with no, physical disability, that's pure blonde hair, whatever the eye color, the blonde, you get what I'm saying? It's so any
Sure.
deviation from that is not any deviation from that is not valued or devalued, um, which is not the same thing. So, and that's what this is speaking to. It's saying that the ideas of normality, because being disabled is not normal, right? That's what they're saying. Intelligence, excellence,
Mhm.
desirability, that also feeds into it. Productivity, that is very key also. So that's what I hear. Your thoughts, any one of you, Liv or Michelle?
You go ahead, Michelle. I'm really loving this.
Oh, I wanted to hear your input, Liv. So, because I think you have some good perspectives as well to share. So, speak up.
Well,
Oh,
you
thank
you
you.
you you also have a invisible disability that
I
you've talked
do.
about.
Yeah.
So if you're comfortable sharing, yeah. So what do you think about all of what we're saying here and what we've been talking about?
Oh, I don't know. So much. I'm thinking like we've had some great comments. like, we have a lot of people who are really happy we're talking about this. I'm really happy we're talking about this. I'm thinking about how ableism has become, especially more recently since I adopted my service dog who just got up from his nap. I don't know. I can't see right now. But how that's become a much more frequent use of my vocabulary. And yeah, it's hard. But to I guess it's just like what Michelle's been saying. Like, they said like the quiet part out loud. Like, this wasn't something we haven't heard before, that people in the community with quote unquote the made up term by insurance companies, pre-existing conditions, which is really actually referred everywhere else as your medical history. That's, just the ways that we've been, again, propagandized to normalize ableism and make it just like a normal part of our routine. So it's been really difficult. But I think especially now with COVID, not only all these deaths being attributed to it, but this whole new condition, long COVID, that's going to be attributed to it. Like, they're ignoring that. They have not, like Michelle said, like, when, go ahead, CJ.
No, I was going to say, is long COVID also disproportionately affecting the disabled community? People who are afflicted with long COVID. So that's a question we can delve into. But how many of her comorbidities have to do with her poor lifestyle choices? So let me see if this person is responding to something in the chat. But this is a question. I mean, we could take it as just this person is posing the question, not necessarily, what their political beliefs are. We can read into that. But how many of her comorbidities have to do with her poor lifestyle choices? When I first read this, I thought it was going to say how many of your comorbidities have to do with poverty as a lifestyle. But then I read the whole thing. So talk about this, about hearing this. Not saying that this person is posing this question as they're being flippant about it, but you've heard this, I'm sure, many, many times, that some of the ailments you may have, your comorbidities, may be your fault. Can you talk about that, Michelle?
I'm not surprised by the question. It's also a good indicator. And again, I also don't know if there was a deeper conversation.
Right. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
That whether this is like, well, of course society judges her for these things. And, I want to think the best about a lot of people. But the other piece to this is the internalized ableism that's present in it, the judgments that are taught to us that we all need to unlearn. There are disabled people with issues that means they can't be vegan. They can't eat nuts and seeds because those nuts and seeds would lead them to possibly having an ostomy bag that, which is bag that collects your excrement attached to your body 24/7 because your colon can't process those foods. And through all of this, whether it's a poor lifestyle choice or not, most of the lifestyle choices that people make are because of the structures that we're currently navigating, because of the capitalism that we're currently occupying, because of the food apartheid that exists in our communities, because of the demands of time that we put into things in order to fix things. When I was relying on the public transportation, I would have to actually schedule 3 possible trips for myself every trip I made. Timing, make sure I have 2 different times that I can connect with this one, and I can get there definitely on time, maybe a little bit early because my transfers have to be timed out, and the transit system here is not necessarily timed to give an extra 5 minutes for the connector to wait. And then, so there's all of these. And if I got that second thing, I was more than likely going to be late, because that was the structure that I navigated. Now, do I accommodate these life choices, or do I do the best that I can to frickin' survive in our society? And how many people that may be fat, maybe other things, maybe even stealing or doing a
Mhm.
vandalism crime, how many of these crimes are because, I'm sorry, the capitalistic, ableist, racist, patriarchal systems that we navigate capitalism demands that we do these things in order to survive. and
Mhm.
and quit blaming the individual when it's a societal issue. And
Right.
I get this within the Green Party all the time. We have those little battles that happen because social justice is freaking messy, and you have people for different causes and different stances, and it's like, is that your agenda? And I understand you may believe that veganism is all this in a bag of chips. Well, I doubt they eat the chips, but or at least some of the vegans I know. When sometimes I have to go eat freaking pork rinds because it has protein and not too many carbohydrates so that I can make sure my sugar doesn't tank down too
Right.
low. Or, at times when I didn't have as much funds or access to food, I would have to, you go into a supermarket
Mhm.
and you get chemicals and products and byproducts and all this other stuff. And who has the time to make yogurt in their oven for 2 or 3 hours, or put it in the yogurt maker and then worry about having enough refrigerator space to store that yogurt after you've made it? How do we do these things in these systems that are barriers? So,
Yeah. I just look at it as, as far as poor decisions, is it your poor decision to eat McDonald's 3 times a week because that's all you can afford? Is that your poor decision to do that? You get what I'm saying? Like, which could
yeah.
lead to being, overweight or having some other condition. Is that
And
is that your fault? Like, it's a not understanding how the system can put people in a position to make decisions. Like, one thing that always happens, they love welfare fraud. Really, is it welfare fraud or people having to lie so they can qualify to get food to feed their family?
right.
Is that really should be looked at the same way? Because you have this arbitrary number, this arbitrary thing that says, hey, this is where we cut off. So the person says, well, then this person doesn't live with me. I only have 3 people who live with me because I need to qualify. So Margot joins us. How you doing, Margot? Oh, she's
Hey,
there. Hello.
well,
So go ahead.
hopefully, hopefully the internet's gonna let me. I hope the internet's gonna let me participate. I don't know. Can you hear me? Am I good?
So far, so good. We can hear you. No,
Okay.
no, like lagging or anything like that. So looks good so far. So we're just finishing up the first segment here with CDC abandons the disabled community. Had you had a chance to, Margaret? Had you had a chance to see the comments from the CDC director about the disabled community? Had you heard about it yet?
So not directly, but I have
Mm.
been listening to you guys talk while I've been sort of getting ready to do this,
Oh, right
working
on,
out all my tech
right
problems.
on.
Sorry.
Do
And
you
I
have any
really love
disability?
what
I'm sorry. Do you have any disability you wouldn't
I
mind
don't.
sharing if you have one? You don't. Okay.
I don't have a disability specifically, but I was raised by the director of special services for Westchester County in New York. He helped a guy escape from Willowbrook School in New York, and I then later went into social work myself. And my entire career has really been around helping the hard to serve and the underserved, which often includes the disabled community. My master's degree is specifically in vocational rehab for the deaf. otherwise disabled. So because that usually
Yeah.
so that usually comes with other things. So that's the disability I'm most trained in. I was trained by the deaf community for the deaf community, but I don't identify as disabled myself. No.
I have a question. Maybe Michelle may know this, or you may know this, Margot. Are there people are there groups are there groups within the disabled community who feel they should be part of a different group? Meaning, like, do they do because we group a lot of different people together all under the umbrella of disability. And I'm asking, the question is, do either of you know if there's anyone in the group or any group within this larger umbrella group that believes either they need to have their own category or a separate category or a subcategory under, if you kind of understand what I'm saying, Michelle?
Yeah, I and I kind of going back to the TL, the TL blog, the definition of ableism. When you get within the disability community, you have a lot of fractions and a lot of subdivisions because disability doesn't discriminate. I'm sorry, anybody can be disabled. Low income, high income, Black, brown, indigenous, especially when you get into that generational trauma that Black communities as well as indigenous and other communities of color experience. And that trauma is directly results, directly correlated with the realities of disability. So with the TL definition, that's a group of disabled advocates that disabled people that are from communities of color and from queer and gender nonconforming communities. So with that, you add to this historical kind of disability rights framing that is very white centric, very white. You add the substance of what we actually need to create equity. I would say white disabled people manage to get us rights. Black and brown and queer disabled people and trans disabled people are reaching for the equity. And I thank them so much for the labor that they put into in regards to that, because it still is not necessarily amplified and prioritized. It's hard to factor into policy. It's hard to factor into these programs. And it's also very much infighty, because white disabled people may see a Black disabled person or a Latino disabled person's experience and we'll say, well, that's ableist. But in reality, no, it's not. It's we don't know yet that it's not, and those communities, I mean, I both state my privilege as well as stating the reality that I envy certain community constructs within the communities of color. Actually, this network is an example of that, because you guys have shown that you can lead. Black people and people of color can be in that leadership role, and you're doing a whole heck of a lot better job than some of the things that I've seen white people create, except again, we get the scarcity model and those lack of resources and the expensive crap that we need to have to ensure that we have equity. And if it was normalized and standardized, we'd have better across all communities. But that you have to remember too, with the intersectionality of disability, my experience is a whole lot easier than certain Black or brown people's experience, because I don't have to deal with racism. And at the same time, through the segregatory behaviors and actions that society puts forward on disabled people, my mother was the one who was like, wow, I see these signs that say it's a wheelchair sign and it says you have to enter in the back and you have to enter in not the main entry. You have to request accommodations. You have to ask permission to be in these spaces. So I've learned about racism through my experiences with ableism. And I also know that my life is a lot easier than some of these other people that have had to beg, borrow, and steal to get ahead, because they're also dealing with racism, xenophobia, homophobia, all of those other things. And that's an important nuance to add into this conversation.
That is a great point, and I saw it in the comments. I don't know if you were reflecting on this same comment, but I saw somebody make that same point that the disabled community is also fractured, and which is I was not aware of. So there's a lot involved with this topic. I feel like I mean, with a lot of topics, I feel like we weren't able to spend adequate amount of time on it. But we will kind of pivot to a couple of more topics, just so that make sure we touch upon these. And the next one will be let's do the cannabis and COVID story, which is basically so there's a study. Let me put it up on the screen here. I'll start with the Daily Mail. So we'll look at a couple of different Daily Mail. Let's bring this one up. So it's a study that talks about COVID or cannabis and the effects it could have or possibly have with COVID-19. So let's bring that up. I think it's this one here. Yeah. Oh, it's not. These are the many articles here. So I meant to share the actual article that I pulled up. So let's do that one more time here. Right here. Okay. All right. So this one. Okay. Gotcha. Cookies. Cannabis compounds can stop the virus that causes COVID-19 from entering human cells by binding to the spike protein and blocking it from infecting people. Study finds the compound. These are the key points. The compounds are found in hemp and can be taken orally or combined with coronavirus vaccination. That's one of their points. The compounds, a pair of cannabinoid acids, bind to the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. They're just showing how it does it. And this blocks the virus from infecting human cells, thus stopping COVID-19. Now, I'll read a little bit into the article here, and then we'll kind of talk about it. So, specific cannabis compounds can prevent the virus that causes COVID-19 from entering human cells. Researchers at Oregon State University identified a pair of cannabinoid acids that bind to the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, blocking a critical step in the process the virus uses to infect people. The team found the cannabis compound, which can be taken orally and are abundantly found in hemp, block the alpha and beta variants from infecting the human cell. But the team notes that there are only 2 variants studied in this research. So the research does, just full disclosure, is only talking about 2 variants. But that's what this particular study found. Now, I'm sure I'll start with Liv. Did you hear about this before I sent you the story? Oh, let me take that off. And what are your thoughts on the possibility or what you've heard or read about this topic, COVID-19 and cannabis?
I know personally it helped me during my time with COVID.
Wait, you had COVID?
Back in what, April? I got down with it April 3rd of 2020.
Okay. So it was a while ago. So you've already hit the year mark. Okay, so you're coming up on 2 years. Okay.
And I've used it since. And I've been good, but here we have someone, the miracle plant. I totally think cannabis and hemp are miracle products. And I just want to make the quick note that people are still in prison because of it, while there are so many others profiting off of this at the same time. Mm-hmm. So free all of our formerly free all the incarcerated and expunge the records of everyone else. Yeah, I have my med card. And it is, I do, like, I was talking to Rome, and it was like, it's like, it's just this whole system now that's created to profit off of cannabis in this way, but still targeting and profiling, racially profiling people, and throwing them behind bars for the same thing. So it's just like this weird alternate reality of like how I can go do this, but like Rome and Detroit, it's like, it's just like this, and that's in America, and it's based off of it's like our last conversation. All roads lead back to slavery, and there's this capitalist system now because they want to still try and control, and big pharma especially, especially after how much they've profited because of COVID-19. It's a threat. Cannabis is a threat to them because that's a plant and you can't patent a natural product. So it's hard to get this research out in the first place. And we don't have enough of it because it's still a schedule. What is it? Schedule 1?
Schedule 1? Is it still
Schedule 1 drug? That's it, there's so many limitations. I was denied a job because of it. It's everywhere. You just can't, and once you start seeing it, you can't stop. It's crazy.
Let's bring in Margot. Margot,
Yes.
what are your thoughts? Had you heard about the story before sort of before this episode? Had you heard about this latest study on cannabis and COVID-19?
Well, I saw it this morning when I was scrolling through my Twitter, like, open the newspaper, scroll through Twitter, see what's going on. And I didn't have a chance to read the article, but I just laughed so hard because it's literally something my husband and I just said to each other like a week ago, where we were like, how have we not gotten it yet? How have we not gotten it yet? We live deep in a red state. I work in the school. My kids played football. Well, there's only one. There might be onto something here. But I think so. I saw the article also, though, with the part about Pfizer, like buying. Please correct me, because, like I said, I work in the school, so sometimes I can sort of check things and sometimes I can't. My schedule is crazy. But so I saw it with the article about Pfizer buying like a cannabis company or something.
Yeah, they're invested in cannabis.
And I thought to myself, well, because I live in Maine, and Maine is a legal state. So it's medically legal. It's been medically legal for a long time. And it's, oh, hey, Bosco. And it's recreationally legal, which means, and it was legalized in 2016 recreationally. And so since then, there's been a lot of, there was a push to not legalize it because of outside big companies. Outside companies coming into Maine and sort of taking over and pushing out the little guy. And there's actually been a lot of that with recreational marijuana or cannabis. And so this all is very interesting. How are they going to deal with the fact that the thing they hate the most, cannabis, may or may not be a useful tool against the virus that they claimed? We all had to vote for Jim Crow Joe because he was the man with the plan. What's his plan now is what I want to know.
Right. Now, like you just said, like you just stated, like this is just a study. We're not saying this is what it does for sure, but this is a study. But it is very curious that there are people that have anecdotally have a story of, yeah, no, I had COVID and I smoked. Like I did, because I've tweeted out about this, asking, because there was another Forbes article that brought this up years ago, like right in the beginning of the pandemic. They mentioned this, where cannabis could be possibly effective in combating COVID-19. This is before all the profiteering began. So and in that tweet, it was just astonishing to me to hear a lot of people saying their own personal story. Yeah, I caught it, and I smoked every day, or whatever, however they partake in cannabis. I smoked every day, and felt fine. I didn't have any adverse effects. I remember somebody even saying, like, the doctors didn't understand, like, how I got over it so quickly without taking anything. And he was like, oh, I didn't tell him I was smoking. So just to hear, those stories, and then you hear about this study, it's just very curious that if this could be a possibility, um, to kind of correlate that to what you were saying, Liv, about there's people still being locked up about this. There's still people not being able to get jobs because of this substance called cannabis. So it's just very curious in knowing that some good that can come of it. And this article and this study comes out. So Michelle, had you heard about this article or this study before I mentioned it? And if not, or if you had, what are your thoughts on just the idea, the possibility of something like this?
I had heard about it briefly, just because I also partake in my own version of how much I do and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting to me because, just that reality of something that is so stigmatized and has this belief and process, kind of all of these structures attached to them, including the
Mm-hmm.
incarceration of people within activist circles. There's still a tendency to realize that any cannabis use, like at certain meeting houses and stuff, could potentially lead to FBI coming in and taking over and getting things that they don't really need. So there's that constant surveillance with it. And then there's, of course, the marketization of cannabis, and what Margot brought in was, that reality that Pfizer also spent a whole lot of money to acquire, a cannabis medication that otherwise would stay obscure. And then behind that, there's also, okay, how much are they buying that medication to control the usage and create something different
Mm.
that is not cannabis controlled? And the tendency in our US society to pass judgment on cannabis use, when, I'm sorry, cannabis is a whole lot more friendly to my system than taking narcotics or other
Right.
things would be. But then all of these things come with a judgment. And how much of our judgment prevents us from actually doing the research to look into these things? So cannabis was utilized in the early 1900s and before that as what some people would call snake oil, or whatever. But it was very effective at controlling a lot of different things. I mean, heck, cocaine was used in Coca-Cola to start with too. But and you can look at the different issues with the different naturally found or more naturally found substances, and that's not the conversation. But at what point can we put aside these judgments and realize that there are very
Mm-hmm.
positive benefits that may or may not be discovered, or may have been discovered and pushed under the carpet, as a lot of things tend to be? And I think it's important that we realize that there are, I mean, indigenous herbal, indigenous natural remedies that are hella powerful through COVID, that especially, again, the communities, I'd say the immigrant communities and the communities of color have this baked into their systems, that, you go get grandma's remedy, and I'm sorry, my grandma's remedy is turpentine, and I don't really want to ingest turpentine or my own urine or, other things. But you know, it's like, who's going to make me this specialty when I'm sick? Because I kind of at this point realize I can no longer probably prevent COVID 100%. I just have to gather my resources to hopefully get all of the wisdom that we have in the US to help keep me as healthy as possible, you know, and as minimally impacted as possible, you know, to bring those natural things in to help me stay well, you know, and help me recover when that time presents.
I think to answer the question, one of the questions you had is like to kind of lose the stigma behind something like cannabis. People have to realize.
Oh, boy.
I think losing the stigma or getting rid of the stigma is going to come with educating people on where the stigma came from, and people don't understand how it literally was a business decision to make him to target him. Literally, it was known to do good, so they said, hey, let's call it marijuana, give it this foreign name because there's no marijuana plant. Let's call it marijuana and give it this stigmatism because we want to make profits off of the stuff, the medicine we're making, not what this plant naturally can do. That's literally how it began, to stigmatize him, because they used to use it. The government used to use it in different ways also. They may still do. I'm not sure. But I think that is the beginning of kind of tearing down the stigma of cannabis. I mean, I must say I partake in cannabis every single day, and that's because of my anxiety. I mean, just different. Instead of taking medication that they want me to take for my anxiety, PTSD, which I have, cannabis serves that purpose without all the other side effects that some of the other medications would have. So yeah. So Margot, when you're able to come back, I will put you back in stream. That is what she was talking about, and it probably because of the time frame. Because I remember her saying once everybody starts coming home from work, that's when her internet will kind of go in and out. So if she gets, let's see, no, she's still. If she's able to fix it, Margot, if you're watching and able to jump back on, I will put you back in if you're able to jump back on. So then let's go to one of our other topics, which is the Philip. Let's go to this one here since I have the video up. So I'm going to play a video. The next topic we're going to cover is the squad and the ability of the squad to control every single piece of legislation that comes to the House floor. And this is a video I did a while back, reposted it today, and I did want to kind of readdress the topic since I saw a couple of good comments here from the video I posted today. So let me play the video and then we'll kind of talk about it.
House of Representatives, the entire first term of a Joe Biden presidency.
One second. Let me cue this up the right way. Start this over. All right. So this video again, the title, let me read you the title. Actually, I'll read it afterwards. So here we go.
With the numbers in the House being so tight, the squad could control the House of Representatives the entire first term of a Joe Biden presidency. The squad and progressives and generals, just not the squad, withholding their vote as a way of controlling the legislation that comes to the floor of the House of Representatives the entire first term of a Joe Biden presidency. Now, how can they do that? The same way that they're talking about forced to vote on Medicare for all is the same way they can control the legislation that comes to the House floor the entire time of a Joe Biden presidency. Because the numbers in the House are so tight when we're talking about Republican seats versus Democratic seats, it only takes a few progressives. It only takes a few members of the squad to not abstain, but withhold their vote as a way of negotiating legislation, So you withhold your vote, or you were threatened to withhold your vote until this amendment is voted on, until that amendment is voted on, until these words is put into, or these policies are put into this legislation. Threatening to withhold your vote unless these pork products are taken out of legislation. It's a lot that the squad and progressives, elected progressives, can do with this tactic. There would be no explanation good enough from progressives and the squad to explain away why they're not doing or using this tactic to control what's happening in the House of Representatives. But what they will attempt to do is gaslight us, of course, just like what AOC is doing now with the force the vote movement. Progressive voters should primary those progressives who refuse to use this tactic, because essentially you're running as a progressive, but you're governing as a corporate Democrat. We didn't elect you to go in and do the same things that corporate Democrats do.
Yeah, so I did want to kind of revisit this topic since AOC
With
was
the
in
numbers in the House being so
Let me
tight,
turn this
the
off. It's
squad
in
could
my ear.
control the House of Representatives the entire first term of a Joe Biden.
Okay, so sorry about that. So yeah, I was able to stop that. So with AOC being in the news with her catching COVID and her abandoning Amazon workers, and we can interject that that topic into this conversation. Two, I wanted to talk about just reiterate this, that the margins in the House are so thin, so razor thin, that what Joe Manchin is doing in the Senate, the squad could do as a group in the House. And what is Joe Manchin doing in the Senate? Joe Manchin is controlling legislation. That's what he's doing. Even now, the Voting Rights Act, what are they doing? They're trying to push for 2 senators. They're trying to speak to 2 senators and convince 2 senators, Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin. It's because the margins in the House are so tight. I'm sorry, in the Senate are so tight that they need every single vote. And it's the same case in the House. And I just don't understand why a group who call themselves progressives and want, certain things legislative wise, why they don't work together to get that. It just begs the question, are they there for what they say they're there for? So I'll start with Liv. Since you're shaking your head, then I'll go to Michelle. So Liv, what are your thoughts on, if the squad is able to control legislation, do you think that's possible with the margins? And if you do, or if you don't, you can explain that. Why aren't they using it if they can?
It's absolutely possible. They told us before that if we voted for them that they were going to block vote and do et cetera, et cetera. We know this is already possible. And yet they still fail to do it. And people are still being bought into it. But they have not delivered any result for us, for the working class people. They've given money to the police, to the Pentagon, to Israel. They have not done anything to help us. Yet, there are still people who are still bought by the fraud squad because of the performance activism that they do. But wearing a tax the rich dress, that literally gets people to still think that they stand for what I fell for. We've had an episode about that. What I fell for, what they sold us on. And I'm sorry, what was the other part of your question, CJ?
No, I'm just. I mean, what you're saying is fine. You don't have to talk about the question, but because what you're saying is fine. The critique on the squad, I do take. But what I was saying is, why do you think they don't band together? Like, why do you think? You know what I mean? Like, if you're saying I want to build a house, and there's a hammer right there with some nails, like, why aren't you picking up the nail and the hammer that's right there at your foot and begin building the house that you say you want to build? That becomes a question. So Michelle, I'll bring you in here. Like, why do you think um they aren't using this power?
Uh, it's called the duopoly and the corporate powers that be, and the fact that if they step out of line, as we've seen with the history of Bernie Sanders and other candidates, they get spanked, and they get spanked hard because of the fact that in order to run for reelection, they need the support of the Democratic Party because our government freaking structures have made it next to impossible to run off party status. And they continue to make it impossible to run off party status. And if anybody that really has a desire, because I think politicians are the special breed, and actually I kind of am one of them. So I haven't figured that role out in my life, but they're a special breed because they have to be this slick oil salesman, basically. And they have to be, some of them may go into politics with very good intentions, but then the system kind of twists it and turns it, and it makes them into, oh, I have to do the most that I can, because again, we got the cult of individualism and how our structures are all set up, and our beautiful American democracy that's actually a pile of shit right now. And I think it's always been, because we're based in that, ableist, capitalist, racist, imperialist, colonialist structures that we've never fully shed. Because to shed those structures, we kind of have to start over again. And how can, so many people don't want that much work. They don't want to do that work. So AOC, all of these people, and I see it in young women especially, that they're like, oh, she's doing amazing things. And it's like, she did a couple. But wait, we'll get to this point where she's allowing Amazon strikes to be blocked, where she's allowing, votes to go forward. Because if she doesn't mind her P's and Q's, she gets bumped out of office. And to run again for office is almost impossible. You see
So
it
the
more
game
in
is
local. Yeah.
the
Go ahead.
game is about getting reelected, is what you're saying. So it's like she's not going to do anything that's going to upset her possible reelection. Yes. And so let's bring in Margot. Margot, you've heard the discussion so far. What are your thoughts on why the squad chooses not to collectively work together and be this voting bloc that could, influence legislation?
I feel like you can't have a conversation about the squad without also talking about Bernie Sanders, because Bernie proved that you can move mountains, grassroots wise. And so, because I asked myself that question a lot, why would somebody get into politics if they're just going to go do bad things? You know what I mean? Like, what if I could get into politics? Would I turn bad too? The question becomes really, what happens once you get through those doors? Because Bernie proved with our $27 a month, or I think mine was actually $10 a month, of course, now he ran up against the Democratic Party where, they did their thing and made their phone calls and all of that stuff. But money wise, we proved that we don't need that. Right? So why aren't the squad doing, they could win. They want to win re-election. They need to make us happy. They need to, so we'll keep sending our $27. They don't need their big Democratic donors. They need us, really. So, ultimately speaking, the money train of the Democratic Party and all of that nonsense is going to end because like I think I mentioned earlier on another show about how my neighbor, who I love her to death, thank God for her, she's the only reason why we are not homeless right now, but she is a shit lib. You know, when she starts to question electoral politics, you know, the Democratic
That's a
Party
plus.
is in
That's a win.
really deep shit. Really,
Yeah.
really deep. You know? So I don't know. I mean, what do you think their end game is? Do you honestly think, do
That's
they
what's
think
weird.
that they're gonna be able to stay in office and like
I
keep doing
think
this? I mean, they're
I
becoming
literally
mega
think
rich, but how long is that
they
gonna
are.
last?
I think they went in with good intentions. They was like, yeah, I'm gonna get in, I'm gonna do this, this, and this, and then they got there, and it's like, oh, I'm treated like this. I have this health care. I'm able to take care of my family like this. I'm able to have this influence. So they believe that, hey, I'm still progressive. I'm still this. I still want all these things. It's better for me to be here, at least being able to speak and be the voice for some of these things, than not be here. And they start to rationalize it that way. It's like they rationalize it, well, it's better than me be here than someone who's corporate who takes money. Is it? Because if it's the same result, why is it better for you that you're there? You get what I'm saying? So if Nancy Pelosi becomes speaker without extracting any sort of concessions, then what is the difference in you being their AOC than a corporate Democrat? Is what I'm saying. Like, oh, because you
Right.
tweet some stuff, because you say a bunch of things that people like, and anytime, you know, you may have seen this on Twitter. Anytime there's any critique of AOC, it's, what have you done lately? Then it becomes, then that turns on, what have you done? Have she's done this and this? And they always name a bunch of things she's done as an activist. And this is what I always say to them, is that if I hire a firefighter and that firefighter goes out and raises money for the local Girl Scouts, am I to judge him as a firefighter on what he did for the local Girl Scouts? Is that how it works? Doesn't make any sense. So as do that, go out and raise money for your local Girl Scout. Go out and raise money for that cause. That is great. Don't stop doing that. But that in no way absolves your responsibility in the duties you're supposed to do as a legislator. That's the point, you know, that I make about that. Like, because you could not be an elected official and still do all of that great mutual aid, all that
Right.
great fundraising. You can go do that. But once you have the job, then there's an expectation that you're doing legislation, that you're pushing the legislation that you say. So this is the point that I make. Like, your entire job as a legislator is to push the legislation that you want. So why aren't you banding together to do that? Unless
And
something else supersedes that. Go ahead, Michelle.
the thing that we often forget in these conversations, the system is working exactly how it was programmed and how it was designed.
True. Very true.
And AOC got into office under a blue ticket, which meant that she was getting in as a blue ticket, not as a human being. And this is the thing that media doesn't cover, is that AOC is a human being. Sure, yeah, she does a lot of great things. She does a lot of good things, but she's complicit in the system. And that system is what's broken. It's not AOC, it's not the squad, it's not anything else, because technically on the same level as human beings are struggling to network and create and survive, we make decisions and choices that we think at the time are the best thing for us. And I think early in AOC's running, there were conversations more about this, that, you know, she's signing on the dotted line to the Democratic Party, who helped get her elected. They had an agenda too, and they are exacting that agenda today. And how much of what she's doing is controlled by that agenda, you know? And then there are the people that are complicit with those agendas. And but we have to, in talking about it, the fact that they're blocking, that's what they're supposed to do. or not blocking. That's what they're supposed to do. They have to be that cog in the capitalistic uh, American democracy, beautiful kind of whatever system it actually isn't. But we need more people that aren't under the blue or the red tickets. We need more people that can disrupt that system in that system. However, these candidates can't get the funding to even get ballot access. They can't get the
Right.
funding to make those waves, to make those
Right.
changes. And I would say that AOC's responsibility as an elected, all electeds, their responsibility is not to put forward their beliefs and their priorities. It's to put forward their residents, the people they represent.
Exactly.
I mean, I had a mayor here who said, well, I agree. We agree to disagree in a freaking public meeting when I was talking about defunding the police. He's like, well, I agree that we need to agree to disagree on this issue, and I'm not attacking you, so I don't know why you're attacking me. Okay, so white fragility,
Right.
elected fragility, and you are supposed to listen to me. And my say, if enough of me in society, enough people are saying something, you need to put aside your beliefs. And as my elected official, whether I voted for you or not, you need to listen and change your. I don't care if you change what you believe. You can still believe defunding the police is the
Right.
wrong thing to do. But if the people want it, you need to do it because that's the purpose
Right.
of your office.
You're representing us. You're not to go in and say, I'm going to make the decisions based on what I think is best for my constituent. That's not how it's supposed to work. But this kind of speaks to what you were kind of talking about. The problem is the squad holding the Dems ransom leads to an R victory. It's not the same as Manchin pulling that trick as again that leads to ours winning. We have lost, we lose. So the insider, so there's a couple of things of obvious, about this. The framing, calling it ransom when they're using their political power. That kind of tells me you're a liberal here by using that word ransom leads to an R victory. That tells me you're a liberal also, because leads to an R victory, because everybody who listens to us knows that R and D are the same thing.
Yeah.
So leading to an R victory is no different than leading to a D victory. So the squad doing their duty as elected officials for their constituents, which means do whatever they can to get the policies that their constituents want. The squad doing that, if that results in any sort of ill effect of the Democrats, that's a Democrat problem. Right? That's
And
a
I would say
Democrat
that,
party problem. Go ahead.
yeah, I would say that the Democrats are still funding the military budget at a higher rate than the Republicans
Right.
do. And
Exactly.
that military spending harms the people almost more than the freaking Republican processes that get put into
Exactly.
place. The tax cuts, we still have tax cuts on the bills that are going forward. We still have benefit programs for the rich. When I'm sorry, the rich people in this country do not need those benefits. The poor people are the
Right.
ones that need benefits, and we need
Exactly.
to. And our government, as much as I hate to say this because it hurts me to say this, because I truly, truly, I'm a white American from history and everything else. I thought our government was there for us, but I don't think it's ever been there for us.
And that awakening is what we need, what the movement needs, what the revolution. We need more people waking up to that. You mentioned Margot about your liberal neighbor, making comments about capitalism. But my last comment about this comment I have on the screen is that we have to get out. And I'm happy if liberals are listening here, even conservatives too. We have to get out of this red blue thing. Like, if you think about it, Republicans and Democrats, we're Americans. Why are we acting like red and blue is a team that we should fight on above the American team? That's what doesn't make sense to me, as I'm not invested whatsoever in a red or D gaining victory because of something I want. It doesn't have a bearing on what I say, what I want to do, if that is going to result in a R victory. Because let me explain to you, the insider. I'm hoping that's your name. So the insider. So let's say a red does win. The red is being paid by Blue Cross Blue Shield, millions of dollars, right? Do you think the plan that Blue Cross Blue Shield has, that they want to have, government implement for them all the great things, right? Do you think it changes if a Democrat is in there? Like Pfizer's plan doesn't change, United Healthcare's plan doesn't change, Boeing's ideas doesn't change, Raytheon's ideas, all these companies that donate to R and D, both, their corporate agenda doesn't change. This is a reason why it doesn't matter if a D or R is in there, because the agenda of the people who pay them is the same. This is why, we're, people like this channel and our friends, we don't buy into this RD stuff. The people who are paying them are the same people. So it doesn't make a difference, at least to me. So that's what I wanted to say on that comment. We do have a few more minutes that we can kind of jump to the last topic. It's a quick topic we can just give our thoughts on. But before we do that, I do want to give Margot and Liv and Michelle another opportunity. If you have more that you wanted to say on the squad, on this topic, or on any part that has been said so far, I'll start with you, Liv. Did you have any final comments on this topic?
Yeah, I do. And I don't really care how I'm going to sound right now, because I'm going to sound like a full-blown conspiracy theorist. But I'm going to do it, because y'all need to hear this again. Really convinced AOC, at least one member of the squad, is a CIA plant and is here to infiltrate the movement. She went to BU as an international relations major. She interned for Kennedy, who killed someone, and got away with murder. And now she's sitting pretty in office, working on, as politicians do, because we don't have policy makers in office. We have politicians that are only concerned about getting reelected. They're not actually concerned about putting forward legislation for the people. So we end up with plants who are trying to tell us to wait and eager to promote caution and to hold off on things. And we have AOCIA. Yes, I'm telling y'all, look it up more. I am so convinced that at least AOC, if not more of the squad, is and if not more of people in Congress, that is how they're in office. They're already vetted. They're already here to infiltrate. And once you start waking up to that, like once you start hearing this information, once you start hearing and seeing all these conspiracy theories come true, Event 201, the Great Reset, when you start seeing all these things come true, like you can't help but start to question and see the other things, and like at least ask questions and say, like, well, this is a little suspicious. Like, this doesn't seem right. Like, you said all those things when you were going to go in office, like to get me to vote for you. And now you're not doing any of those things. Now you're like kind of doing like a total 180. So what's this about? Start asking those questions. Those are good things. They don't want you to, but those are good things to be doing. That's where this starts at. Be suspicious.
Absolutely. And conspiracy theories are just could be just facts unproven. Could just not be proven yet. It could be looked at that way. But I don't have any evidence of it, but I've heard the same thing many times. I think you and I have talked about it many times about AOC in one episode we've done. I just say I'm not surprised on anything. Like if they came out and she was like, "Hey," and she just took off a mask or something, and she was like another person, like a Mission Impossible, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. You know what I mean? Like I don't like at this point, what this empire will do is willing to do. I mean, it's not nothing is surprising to me. So Michelle, did you have any last words on this particular topic before we finalize the next one?
No, I think that most of what I've said, I've already said. Most of what I feel, I've already said. So I'm good. Thanks.
Absolutely. And Margot, I think your internet looks like it's running well. So did you have any final comments on this last topic?
Oops.
I'll give you enough time. And I just got a message. If you're talking, Margot, we can't hear you. Okay, I heard something. You said I don't know. Maybe it sounds like there's just a big delay. But I did just get some news from Sabrina. Oh, this is 2 hours ago. I just looked at it. 8,500 Kroger supermarket employees just went on strike in Denver.
Love it. Solidarity.
So yeah, they just went on strike in Denver. So okay, so I saw that, Margot. All right, so the final thing before we jump off here, just your thoughts on. You may not have heard or saw Joe Biden's speech on voting rights in Georgia, but there is a push to civil rights leaders are really pushing him. They're trying to light the fire under him with the Voting Rights Act, I think it's called the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. They're really trying to push him with this. Basically saying you made this promise to the Black community, and if you do not do something tangible here, don't expect us to show up in the polls. He actually even went down to Georgia, and Stacey Abrams did not attend because his poll numbers are so low, and she's trying to get elected as governor. There is what I think. And then there was some other civil rights groups who said, no, we're not attending your speech, Joe Biden, because don't come to Atlanta unless you're coming with the finalized plan of this passing. No more talk, no more of that. So I thought that was unique about this particular thing. But here's my take on it. I'm not that invested in electoral politics. So as a result, I'm not that invested in voting rights for electoral politics. I understand that for a lot of Black people, this voting rights is a big deal. But I look at it as having more people who have access to be duped, propagandized, and lied to. What does that do? That doesn't help anything. And having more people buy into the blue-red game, why do I want to help do that? I don't want to help do that. So that's kind of how I look at it. Like I get that what people are fighting for and what they believe they're fighting for. That's what a better way of saying it. I get what people believe they're fighting for. I just think that putting all your hope and energy into voting rights for a system that inflicts oppression, for a system that's trying to stamp out third parties, like I just can't like fully be on board with that. So what are your thoughts, Michelle, on any part of this, not just what I said? So voting rights in general, if you want to speak on that. About Joe Biden's speech, you think it's hollow? Is he just virtue signaling? They're really not going to do anything with these voting rights. And also the filibuster, because in his speech, he did say, I am in favor of doing whatever needs to happen to get voting rights passed, including changing the filibuster. So he has explicitly said he's down to change the filibuster as a carve out to do this, pass this legislation. So what are your thoughts on the filibuster, changing it possibly on voting rights, on voting rights in a duopoly? I feel like I have to include that in the question. Voting rights
Yeah.
within a duopoly system. What are your thoughts, Michelle?
Well, the variable, and I'm going to bring disability back in because that's what I do everywhere. The voting rights stuff is actually also a disability rights issue.
Yes,
A
that is
lot
true.
of the stuff that's trying to get controlled, it's a double-edged sword almost, because half of the corrections end up being barriers for people with disabilities, or half of the new laws end up messing with all of this, and also the black and brown voters that are barred from the polls include the disabled people that are barred as well because of those changes that are made. However, we're everybody again going back to the cog in the wheel. We have a system that when they make this bill, it's a whole bunch of text, things get embedded into it. And those
Hmm.
things that are embedded that are bargaining chips that are used to get the passage of something can do a whole lot more harm than what most people are aware
Yes.
of. So on the surface of this bill, I 100% support it. I 100% support voting rights, increasing the voting rights. I
Right.
100%. The bill itself, though, I can't support, unfortunately,
Right.
because it bars the independent candidate and non-duopoly voters, candidates from being able to access that level. And it adds more barriers into us changing the freaking system. So in order for the system to change, we have to have access to the system. We also have to have representation within the system. Until we get those things, the system's not really going to change. And that's where I get a lot of the sentiment of, I don't care about electoral politics because it's a whole big freaking waste of time on a
Mhm.
bad, a good day, let alone a bad
On a
day.
good
So yeah,
day.
these people are. It's kind of like, if you think wearing a mask is oppression, I'm really glad to
Mhm.
hear you've never been oppressed.
Right.
Because that's the reality. These people
Yeah.
sit in their fancy rooms. They have access to testing. They have, access to regular freaking medications that are barely approved for everybody else. They have health care for the rest of their life. They have health care. Do I doubt that that's why some of these people run for office, is to gain that wealth? And the fact that the system has become a way to gain that wealth and status and to shift somebody
Yeah,
from the
that's
worker to the owners, it's ridiculous. So yeah.
it's all terrible. Liv, did you have any thoughts on filibuster, voting rights, voting in a duopoly, the value of that? I mean, there has to be some value. Like, we still like both of you are in a Green Party, so there is maybe not a value, but there is you fight in the corrupt system along with trying to take the corrupt system down. So I guess it's a dual fight. So what are your thoughts, Liv?
I think that politics is exhausting, but it's still a well worth it fight. Because currently, in our system, it dictates everything. And like, why I'm involved in the Green Party was, because I did think at a point that we could do it as a third party, like take control of the duopoly and win it back and take over power. But then I joined the Green Party and saw what a mess that is. And I was like, y'all can barely hold yourselves together, let alone be a competitive, viable third party to like take down the establishment. So now my goal in the Green Party, which I'm very much for, like the 10 key values, our platform. My goal is using it for promoting mutual aid, to get this revolution going. And then for, when we have this revolution and we're coming up with our new constitution or whatever, using some of, I do really like ecological wisdom and gender equity, and all those good things that the Green Party stands for. Like, I want those to be incorporated into, what our new whatever is.
Right.
But I'm thinking, like, we do not have time to vote ourselves out of the climate crisis. Like, we do not have time to wait for that. So it's really hard. And when the climate crisis is on my mind as the forefront threat to humanity, it's really hard for me to take people seriously when we're talking about electoral politics, because what has that done but hurt us and got us to where we are now? And so when I talk about electoral politics, I can talk about it in a way that's like futuristic, I guess. Like what do we want this to look like? Like, how do we want our political parties to function? Like, what do we want our new true, like, if we want a democracy, what do we want that to look like? That's what I'm here for now. I am not here for, because also, HR1, like, is a poison pill bill for third parties. So, all of this legislation that is being proposed by the establishment, by Blue MAGA, Red MAGA, same teams, they are on the same team to try and make sure that you cannot have a viable third party or anything other than the establishment. They're working hard to suppress that. So yeah, I kind of just did a little ramble, but yeah. My take right now is fuck electoral politics. It's about, general strike, solidarity with them, mutual aid, and revolution.
Absolutely. Michelle,
Can
you
I-
had more you wanted to add? Yeah.
Yeah, just one little tidbit. The thing that I value with my experience with non-duopoly parties has been the exposure to the critical thinking, the exposure to the different viewpoints, right, wrong, and different whatever, the exposure to organizing skills of, through those skills, I managed locally to get an Office of Disability Affairs implemented at the county as well as the city level here in Santa Clara County. And those skills I wouldn't have had if I wasn't involved in the Green Party. So the steps to create change, and the Green Party is a troubled group of people because we all believe passionately in a lot of different things, and we're all fighting this losing battle, but it's okay to give us a try. You don't always have to vote green because you're green, because what Greens believe is you vote what you feel and you vote what you believe. And if that vote means that you're doing the propaganda of my vote is counting against the candidate that we, whatever, that's okay. Because if we all exercise our individual power, and this is one place where individually we can create a collective good, we can make some of the changes that are necessary. So your vote, everybody's vote is still important. We just need to figure out how to break down the systems that those votes are getting kind of wasted in,
Absolutely. So both of you part of the Green Party, any big thing coming up, respectively, where you're at, Liv, versus where you're at? Any big events the Green Party in your area is planning? Anything coming up?
Go first, Michelle.
I think the most impressive thing that happened here locally recently was in coalition with a lot of other groups, and including neoliberal groups and other groups and liberal groups and progressive groups and whatever. One of the other fellow leaders of the local county Green Party and within the state of California, we managed to the AB 1400, the CalCare bill, passed the healthcare committee yesterday. And through that advocacy and activism, we got our local city council to also sign a statement of endorsement for universal health care, single payer health care. So through some of this grassroots organizing, we've made some significant changes to advance and, the human rights, the 10 key values. Even if you never vote green, it's important to just look at those things because they include social justice, they include equity, and they include some really good reading material and educational events around how to create change and even what the changes that we need. So there's a lot of good stuff that's always going on. So yeah.
Yeah, that all sounds great. Anything going on with the Green Party where you are, Liv?
Yeah, we actually, the Baltimore City Green Party, which I guess I have some time to do tonight, starts at 6:30. We're doing a happy hour, or virtual happy hour. So I'm gonna go to that and propose again this mutual aid event that I'm trying to organize that's just gotten unfortunately just put behind due to my life circumstances, but things seem to be going better with that and things seem to be working out. So I'm trying to organize a mutual aid event in Baltimore City that will be sponsored by probably the Maryland Green Party and Baltimore City Green Party and maybe a couple other locals, and then hopefully we'll find some other partners for it. But it's going to be a mutual aid event. It's going to be a hybrid event. We'll also see depending COVID permitting. But we're trying to work on something where donations for your ticket will go towards Red Shed Village, which is a community that works to house people and get them from temporary housing in tiny homes to permanent homes, to permanent housing. And then also for people who come to the event, who attend the event in person, we're going to be collecting donations such as winter gear, warm blankets, packaged food, and stuff like that we can also distribute it as well. So that's hopefully, I wanted that to originally be at the end of January, but I don't think that's going to happen now. I don't know. Hopefully within the next month or two, hopefully. And then, so that's at 6:30. And then right after that, I will be on the 8 o'clock panel, The New Left on the Populist Voice Network. I will be doing that tonight. And then, Friday night on the Populist Voice Network, I have my show Live Positive. Please like and subscribe to our channel. And then, yeah, that's about it, I think.
Okay. So what do you have, since she said what she has coming up, Michelle? What do you have on the horizon? Any any activism on the calendar? Any city council meetings you got to attend? Anything like that?
Oh, I literally think I read agendas these days more than I read anything else because government structures are insidious and they're kind of all a mismatch of mess. It's a mess. Let's just say it's a mess. Locally, we had on the consent calendar of all places a bill to buy a bomb box for the police department that was hundreds of thousands of dollars. The other big issue locally is about the construction of a new jail, which many activists are trying to redirect that, given the pandemic experience, as well as the fact that people just don't deserve to be caged, when they're awaiting their trial and even after that, our system is broken in that sense too. And the Care Not Jails is done by some local really good advocates and activists that are very vocal about that. The other piece is that we're heading up into another election, and the local elections on off years are the ones that are probably the most important and the most impactful, We just went through a blue ribbon commission to redevelop the city charter for the city of San Jose. And the committee that's done this, while they kind of totally omitted disabled voices, and that is what it is, they put some good things forward, like ranked choice voting, public elections, you know, doing some shifting of you know, and then of course the redistricting process has just happened in a lot of areas too, which is a constant source of undermining those marginalized by society, you know, undermining their votes by diluting them so much that they don't have the power, the voter power that they need. So there's a lot of things always going. I live and breathe, I think, some of this sometimes. And then there's, you know, other things that just, we need a different system.
Yeah, I know that sigh is like, man, it's so many fronts to fight this failing system. Is so many fronts we have to fight. So I get the sort of exhaustion, at least mental exhaustion, dealing with this. So lots of great comments. Thank you for everybody who contributed to the comments. I know we didn't get to all of them, but oh, here was one. How are they holding them ransom? They all, so okay. So great comments. Thank you for those that watched on Rockfin. I think we're streaming on Rockfin today. Thank you for those that are watched on Rockfin and our Facebook. We have to shout out our Facebook all the time because we have people that's watch us on Facebook all the time, and we just want to make sure we acknowledge you. Like and share this video. If you're watching it on a rewatch, meaning not live, you're watching it on a replay, make sure you share this video, like this video, subscribe to us, tell your mom, your dad, your sister, your cousin to subscribe. We were gaining 1,100 followers a month until the general strike, and then that all of a sudden stopped. So something's happening. So please subscribe to us and tell your friends, subscribe. This has been a great conversation. Thank you, Michelle, for joining us during this time. I know you had to make arrangements to make it at this time, but if you ever have time to pop in, you're always welcome to join here. Any last words before I hit the end broadcast, Michelle?
Just a huge thank you to many of the people that I've been introduced through you, specifically CJ. So I've experienced through the RBN and the Populist Voice networks, you know, kind of a lifesaver of my, you know, lack of confidence in society as general. You know, your openness to topics and to conversations, and your willingness to also create a structure that sustains what everybody is trying to do is not done everywhere else in the leftist communities, and I want to highlight that and call that in. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Liv. Did you want to give a last shout out? Any comment shout out? You saw any good comments that you wanted to shout out or anything before I hit that button there? Somebody
y'all
said
are
Nick,
great.
but I don't see Nick. I don't see Nick in there. Somebody mentions Nick, but I don't see him in here. So
Nick, are you here? What?
but
I
that's
see.
Margot. Margot wasn't able to finish here, but she's here. She had internet issues. This is a result of her living in a rural area. This is like the rural area internet broadband. This is something that Ron Placone is big on, and it's for this specific reason. It's like the infrastructure they've decided, hey, it's not profitable to build the infrastructure out there, so it's a lot of rural areas that don't have the internet access like they should. And internet is a utility at this point. Like, it's a utility. They should have access. Everyone should have access. So it should be free. It should be a utility, actually regulated. So that's what I think. Thanks, Ron, for educating me on that. Something I didn't aware. What the general strike, I learned more in the general strike, politically, like not politically, just everyday struggles of everybody's story than I've ever learned from one place. Like just watch that and you'll learn so many different things. Like, wow, I didn't know that about that. And that's what I liked about the general strike. We hope to recapture that with the International Solidarity Summit, which is we're looking towards at March. We announced that yesterday. Nick and I on Monday, not yesterday. We're looking towards March to do that. Where it's basically the same sort of summit. It's just that now we're doing it as worldwide. So we'll have, Brazilian activists. We'll have African activists, from Africa, from Brazil, like streaming from there. We have, of course, Dr. Kareem in China, in Hong Kong. So that's what we're trying to do. Sort of same sort of topics. We're still gonna have like disability. I'm curious to find out what the condition of disability rights worldwide. Like, where did the United States fall in that? If there was some sort of ranking, so that would be interesting for me to find out. So, all right, so I've rambled on enough. Thank you for everybody for all the support. We didn't get to our climate thing today, but for mutual aid, you can always check out Liv. Go to her Twitter profile. She has a bunch of mutual aid. I have my mutual aid that scrolls at the bottom of the ticker. You can always check out my mutual aid. Yeah, so we're gonna be signing off. See everybody next Wednesday. I'll be here Monday for the Nick and CJ show. Tomorrow, Thursday, we have the round table. Friday is the Sabby show. Saturday, Nick will be here. Sunday is the JB show, and then I'll be back here on Monday. And then Rome will throw himself in there somewhere. So just wait for him to announce where he's going to be on one of those days. So thanks again, ladies. And we will be talking with everybody next